Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, Lighting and Video Adaptability, Being Prepared for Everything to Go Wrong, with Scott Kinnebrew. My name is Lane Shannon, and I'm a Content Marketing Manager here at Harman. And just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit questions to the presenter, and they will try to answer as many questions as possible at the end. This webinar is also being recorded, and the link will be made available a few days after this presentation. We do have a number of other webinars taking place over the next few months for audio, lighting, video, and control. And we encourage you to take a look at the different webinars in our Learning Sessions workshop series on pro.harman.com, as well as visiting Harman Professional Training to see our many on-demand and certification courses that are always available to you free of charge. And I have just added that to the chat. While you're in the presentation, if you'd like to peruse those, you can go there. You just click on the brand and then webinars. So there you go. And now I'd like to introduce you to the presenter for today's webinar. Scott Kinnebrew is a lighting and video industry veteran with more than 25 years of experience, who's worked across the globe with some of the biggest names in the industry. Scott is a technical specialist that knows the show must go on. And now I'll pass it over to you, Scott.
Welcome, everybody. As mentioned, I'm Scott Kinnebrew. I've got, we say 25 years. It's for sure been longer than that. I think the first time I ever pulled a rope to open a curtain was maybe kindergarten. I also found myself on stage at an early age, not for anything big, for, Frosty the Snowman at the holiday times or that kind of stuff. But I've always found the lighting and the video aspect of things to be extremely interesting to be a part of. I turned lights on. I got in the booth. I did those kinds of things in high school and at church and places like that growing up. In the 90s, I moved to Austin, which is where I currently reside, and got into the nightclub business and found that, sometimes as a security guy, you have other roles. If the lighting guy doesn't show up, maybe you have to run lights. If the DJ doesn't show up, you have to DJ. If the sound guy doesn't show up, etc. So I learned early on that things have to be taken care of. You have to pre-plan for things not to worry about things going wrong. But, as long as you got your head on straight and, you're thinking in advance and knowing, hey, this could happen or that could happen, life gets a little bit easier. So the first thing that I want to discuss today is getting prepared for the show itself or the event or the project that you're working on. I'm not just going to talk about live entertainment. I'm also going to talk about things that fixed installs, opportunities, jobs of that sort as well. The key thing that you really have to ask yourself before any job that you go out on is, who are you working for? Am I working for a brand? So do I work for a manufacturer? Is it lighting? Is it video? Is it a media server? Is it, even as far as sound, maybe I'm doing accessories, those kinds of things. And what am I representing as a brand? Well, you're representing the salesperson, the person that sold the gear to the job. You're representing their boss and all of the people in service and the people in the warehouse that shipped it and the person that they talked to on the phone to find out where their order is, when they're going to get it. You're representing all of those people that have a solid relationship with the person that you're going to work with. So always remember, when you're representing a brand, you're representing more than just yourself. You're representing a whole group of people, and that's important. It's those relationships that help build further business. If it goes well this first time, they're going to buy more the second time. So what's the brand that I'm representing? Sometimes that brand's you. Sometimes that brand is a design group. There's a lot of things that can be brands, but usually it's bigger than just you. So you got to think about that when you're out doing your job. Am I working for a supplier? So the rental house, the AV company, the integrator. Am I in between the brand and the end user? What is my role there? Am I an installer? Am I fixing something? Am I working with the general contractor on site itself? Who am I working with at that point? But what it does normally is it makes you responsible for the gear. You've seen the drawings. You know what the project is. You have an idea of what the design is. You know, possibly, in a rental house situation, you're familiar with the gear because you've used it on another job. You might know what quirks it has, or how old the gear is, or what issues you might run into, what it may have been set up before. Maybe it doesn't have the right plugs on it. Maybe it doesn't have any cables. Maybe it needs special things, special clamps. It's been, some weird design, but you're the specialist and you're the one that knows about that. So be prepared in your head. Okay, we're using this particular gear. This is where it's going. And you're the expert. Am I part of a crew or the production company itself? A lot of times that will be your role. Especially in the lighting and video world, is you'll be out as part of a tour. You'll be the specialist. You'll be the person that's handling a specific aspect of that project. With that kind of role, you're part of a bigger team, so your job may not be so specific all of the time. You may have to help out here. You may have to help out there. But it's good to know what part of that crew you are. Am I sound? Am I lighting? Am I video? What's my specific role? And that's key to getting the job done. And we'll dig a little bit more into that here in a bit. Also, am I working directly for the talent? Again, specific role. You may be a designer at that point, a board op. You could be, a guitar tech or a drum tech, or someone that works on the bus. All of these things, there's lots and lots of jobs in this industry that people can have where things can go wrong. So knowing your role and who you're working for is a very important part of your job. Being part of the talent, though, is probably the broadest definition of what's expected of you. If a specific category gets complicated and things aren't getting done, if you're the designer, it may be your responsibility to take care of that. So knowing, having an idea, having that mentality of, anything can go wrong at any time, it is good to stay focused on, because if you can't get it handled, other jobs can't get done. So it can cause a really severe delay and cause things to really come to a grinding halt. Apologies in advance if there's a little bit of delay in me getting through my slides. This is my first real presentation, so apologies in advance. Back to who I'm working for. Sorry. There's some things you need to know as far as who you're working for on site. Is it one specific person? Do I have one specific point of contact? Is there one person I'm going to be responsible in order to get things done for? My advice is always reach out to this person before the gig, whether it's part of a crew, you're representing a brand, it's a job site where something's being installed. Reach out to this person, talk to them before the gig, because at the gig, they're going to be busy all the time. They're not going to have any downtime. They're going to be talking to other people that they're responsible for, whose jobs they need to make sure are getting done, all of that kind of stuff. They're going to have your logistics as far as how you get there, where you're going to stay, how long the job is, what time you need to be there, all that kind of stuff. I also suggest talking to them right before the gig. Finding out, make sure nothing's changed. Back in '95, I was supposed to go out on tour as a stage manager for an act that was part of a multi-band tour. I quit my job, set up everything so that I could go out. checked in a couple of days, and this was before really anybody had a cell phone as the norm, to find out what was going on, because I was supposed to go to Dallas. We were going to meet there, get on the bus, go out on tour, and we got kicked off the tour, the band that I was representing. The reasoning was because they weren't hard enough. It was definitely an edgier metal kind of tour, and this band didn't quite fit that genre, but it was an alternative tour and things. There were some weird lineups in the 90s. So we got kicked off. I got my job back, didn't drive to Dallas, didn't have to worry about going on tour. I almost rented out my room in the house I was living in at the point. So luckily I had somewhere to live still. So checking in, making sure everything's on track, very important to just keeping your life normal at that point. Maybe it's multiple people that you have to respond to. It could be the tour manager, could be the general contractor, it could be the designer. There's all sorts of people that you could have to report to, and it's good to just kind of set that in the beginning, figure out who they are, make sure that they're updated as things move forward. Also, how do they like to be communicated with? We have all sorts of ways that we can communicate with people nowadays. We've got cell phones, we've got radios once we're on site, we've got email, text messages. Some people don't like to be called. So knowing, and just honestly, just ask them, how do you like to be communicated with? What's the easiest way for me to get a response from you? What's the easiest way for you to keep up with my communications? Questions like that. I mean, I'll get into questions later as far as how to handle them. But asking questions is important. If people don't just hand you the information, it's better to get that information so that you know in advance how you can do your best job. Also, one of the things that I find important is getting details in writing. There's phone conversations, there's emails, there's text messages, there's all that kind of stuff, but get it in writing. If you're working for a manufacturer, there's a good chance that you're not the point of contact. It's probably your boss in the department that you work for, or it's the salesperson who sold the deal. Somebody else more than likely is going to be the main point of contact. Maybe they have the details. Maybe they have the contract. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's been a handshake deal. Maybe it was written on a napkin. Maybe there's an email that you weren't copied on. But those details are important. It covers all sorts of things. Maybe it's just you working with a tour as an independent. Get it in writing. Travel, logistics, which we'll talk about. Lodging. Are you going to get fed? Would there be access to things like laundry, stuff like that? When do you need to be there? We'll touch on that as well. How long you're going to be there, things like that. As I said, get it in writing. Doesn't always have to be a contract, though contracts are nice. Even a contract isn't 100% ironclad, legally binding. So people could still try and take advantage of you. But having it in writing protects you a little bit, actually protects you more than just a little bit. It gives you something that you can go back to, even if it's just something as simple as an email. It gives you something to fall back on. It also gives you maybe some job description, what you're responsible for, things that you're supposed to take care of, why they're bringing you on site. Because there's going to be times where you're asked to do things that maybe you're uncomfortable with, or you're not supposed to do, or it's somebody else's product and you don't want to mess it up. Again, we'll touch base on these specifics later on in the presentation, but get things in writing, super important. First off is logistics. We can just start off with this camel picture. This was actually taken by me on the back of a camel in the middle of the desert by the Great Pyramid. One thing I learned from this camel ride was there's multiple ways that you can get places. All I wanted to do was ride a camel. I was in Egypt. I wanted to ride a camel. I wanted to see the pyramids. Guy put me on a camel. Took me 2 hours riding through the desert. Got to the pyramids, got some photos taken. When we were done, we got back to where we started in 15 minutes. I honestly probably would have paid the same amount of money to do the 15-minute version both directions. but I got a 2-hour ride. So I still feel sorry for the camel to this day for having to carry me, but the choice was camel or horse, and my legs were dragging on the ground on the horse, so camel it was. But as far as logistics go, the question is, where am I going and how am I getting there? More than likely, you're not going to be lucky enough for every gig that you ever do to be at home, which means you can just drive there and find, or Uber there, find a parking spot, leave your car, go home at the end of the day. So travel, finding out is important. Am I on an airplane? Am I on a train? Is it a boat? Am I on a bus? Is there multiple stops? Knowing those kinds of things are important because a lot of it's comfort level. One question is, what about me getting to the starting point? So I live in Austin. Let's say the tour starts in Dallas, as I mentioned earlier. I get there. Where am I going to leave my car? If I don't have anywhere to leave my car, how do I get there? An Uber ride from Austin to Dallas is going to be rather expensive. So do I fly there? Do I try and find somewhere that I can leave my car and then take a cab or something to the starting point? What do I do about that part? Maybe you are representing a brand, like I mentioned earlier, and you're out assisting a tour. You're training somebody how to use a specific piece of gear that no one's used before. And you're training people how to use products they've never used before. Sometimes that's just rehearsals. So you show up to the rehearsal city, you work with those people, the training gets done, you're on your way back home, they go on the tour, it's done. I had a specific instance where I was out training some people how to use a media server, and we did rehearsals, and they didn't feel comfortable enough on the first stop and the second stop to just kind of do things themselves. So they asked me if I could follow along. Well, the tour didn't plan for an extra body, so there was no room on the bus. There was no hotel. The first night that we were out, between rehearsals and the first show, it was leave at midnight, load in at 8 o'clock the next morning with a 3.5 hour drive in between. So I drove to the first city because it was in Houston. The second show was north of Houston towards Dallas, and I didn't have anywhere to stay. So I just slept in my car, got the job done, went on to the next stop, which was Dallas, stayed there, and then drove home. So it's good to have these things in advance. I didn't plan any of that tour, or as my involvement in it. So logistics were, out of my control. I made it through it, but it was a huge learning experience about knowing what to ask for and how I'm getting there. Another thing is international travel. You may end up in other countries. Some of them may not be super friendly countries. You may need a passport or a visa or, something else to grease palms with, cash, those kinds of things. I mean, trust me, you'll run into all sorts of situations, places. Do a little research before the gig. I mean, the beauty of the internet is that you can find out just about anything as far as what travel needs there are. There have been countries where I've needed visas before. Brazil is one of those. There have been countries where I was able to get the visa when I got there, like Turkey. It's different based on where you are. Also, one thing is, if you need a passport, you have it with you, don't ever give it to anybody. It's keep it on you. Don't keep it in your bag. Don't keep it in the hotel room, even if it's in a safe. Keep it on you. Keep it where you've got your stuff. It's very important some places to have that in case people start checking people, wanting to know why you're there. Shows can be weird. Cities can be weird. Countries can be weird. So always be prepared. Have that stuff on you. It's extremely important to make sure that you have your credentials at all times. And then when it comes to travel, the other thing always is, part of this job is travel. It's not always, luxury travel. I'm not doing it because I'm on vacation. So you're the one doing the traveling. Check with the person that's doing the logistics. Like if it's a tour, can I get my own frequent flyer miles? Can I fly on an airline that I'm comfortable with, as long as, there's not extra cost there? Sometimes that's not always an option. It's not always a luxury that you get as part of, being part of a team, but it's worth asking. Same goes for hotels and stuff. Can I get my points? I mean, points are important. I've taken my family on vacation with points. And it's an extra benefit to doing part of this job. Sorry, bear with me for a moment. And then the other thing, as far as logistics goes, is where you staying. Hotel, a tent, an RV, those kinds of things. The question is, where am I staying? And again, points. Hotel points are important as well. Logistics on the job. What am I doing? What's my role? What's expected of me? Things always change. Their needs change. Their budget goes down. They don't have as many people. One of the important things, as I mentioned earlier, is having your responsibilities in writing. What is expected of me? Why am I on job site? What am I doing? We'll talk about flexibility in a bit, but it's nice to know what you're doing. That way the job gets done. Also, again, who you're working for, because that person can protect you when people start asking you to do things that aren't in your job scope, and maybe you don't have the skill set to do it. They can protect you and explain to people, this guy is here for this reason, or this gal is here for this reason. This is what they're supposed to do. Leave them be. You focus on your job. When do I need to be there? This is a very important part of going to a job site, specifically, whether it's an install or whether it's a tour. When do I need to be there? Because your job can affect other people from doing their jobs. And this goes for them too. Being there at the right time, it saves people money because they don't have to put you up an extra day in a hotel. Flights may be cheaper if you can get there a day later. You can save people money that way. But we all have a specific job when it comes to a project or a tour, a one-off, a festival, any of those kinds of things. And it's important to be there at the right time, because it affects so many other aspects of the tour itself or the project itself. Maybe it's a video wall that you're building and your responsibility is to build the base. Well, the guys that are putting the tiles in can't do their job until the base is built. Well, if the floor is not level, you can't put the base in. So there's all of those kinds of things that need to be taken into account. And this goes for somebody that's, planning the project as well. You need to know this needs to be done before this needs to be done before this needs to be done, so that we're not wasting any time. Another one is, how long will I be there? If, it's a festival and I'm working for one act and they play 1 hour on a Saturday, probably don't need to be there Wednesday. But that's up to the person that's in charge of it. That person's in charge of that band. And that's why it's important to have that communication with your contact to know, how long am I there? If I'm only there a day, I'm in, I'm out, I'm done. I don't necessarily need a hotel. I don't need, I may not need as much stuff with me. I may not need, certain things. But it's nice to know. Sometimes it's a week. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Sometimes it's a month. Sometimes it's just an afternoon. So it's important to know how long you'll be there. Another important one is personal needs. Personal needs are a whole bunch of different things. The biggest one is tools. Tools are anything that you need to get your job done. It can be a screwdriver. It can be wire cutters. It can be a pocket knife. It can be markers and tape. It can be all sorts of stuff that you need. It can be a computer. It really comes down to what your specific role is as far as responsibility of getting the job done. So discussing things with the people that have done this kind of work before also is important. If you're coming from a rental house or an AV company or an integrator or something of that sort, talking to guys that have been out on jobs, you can get a lot of information from. Learning from other jobs that you've done. Maybe this is your first time out. Again, the internet, great place to learn. A lot of people share a lot of information out there of horror stories and those kinds of things. But knowing what you need to get your job done is important. There's things beyond just the tools. There's safety vests, there's hard hats, there's climbing harnesses. Always have on closed-toed shoes. Maybe you need steel toes. Maybe you have to wear pants. I've been in the hottest countries, like, say, for example, Brazil, and I was setting up for a trade show there, and they wouldn't let anybody in the convention center that didn't have long pants on. And I thought, oh, it's 100-something degrees and 95% humidity. I'll wear shorts today. Had to go back to my hotel and get jeans, but it wasn't listed anywhere. So, asking some questions, knowing those things, looking on the website, sometimes can give you a little heads up on what you need. Can it come with me? Can I put it in my backpack? Let's say I'm flying to a location. Is it going to be TSA approved? I always have a tool with me that I know isn't going to get me stopped at security. And I've done this as part of crew. I've done this on job sites. I've done this as a sales guy. I've done this as a team manager. I always have a tool that will allow me to get the minimum done if for some reason something has to be fixed. If it can't fly in my personal bag that I'm carrying on, can I stick it in my suitcase? Some things can't fly. Things with batteries, big lithium ion batteries like screwdrivers and those kinds of things. So check out TSA, find out what can be done. I was sent over once to a big job in Latvia, and you'll see some pictures of it later and some other things that happened at it. But on the way, they lost my suitcase. So I had no change of clothes at all. None of the extra stuff except my computer, which luckily was the only thing I really truly needed. But I was missing quite a few things because my suitcase was lost. The gig was done. It was over. It was the day before I was flying home and my suitcase arrived. It didn't really do me any good because I had to wear the same track pants and Iron Maiden t-shirt for 4 days, but I had what I needed. So making sure that the absolute musts are in your bag are there. If I have to ship it to site because it can't go with me, if it's personal, where can I ship it? Is there a truck going that it can go on? Do I need to ship it to site? Do I know where I'm staying as far as a hotel goes? Can I ship it there? Are they going to charge me if I ship it there? I mean, reaching out to the hotel and finding out, hey, I've got a flight case coming. Can you guys receive it so that I can just pick it up when I get there? The other question is that once I'm there, can I get it to the job site easily? If I'm cabbing back and forth or I'm taking an Uber, is it going to fit in the trunk? So knowing those things, that's important also. Can it go with the rest of the gear? Let's say I'm shipping products to somewhere and it's instead of it going to, like, say for a tour and it's a rental house and the gear is going to go straight to the show site, can I ship it with that stuff? Or does it need to go to the rental house early, go with the rest of the stuff that they're shipping or trucking or however it's getting there? These are good questions to ask. Another question to ask, what if it doesn't show up? As many of you may have dealt with over the holidays, shipping hasn't been super reliable through some of the services that are out there because of COVID and all that kind of stuff. So what happens if my stuff doesn't show up? Am I going to be in a location where I can get to things that I need? Is there a Harbor Freight near? Is there a Home Depot near? Is there an electronics warehouse type place near that I can get things? Is there a rental house that I'm friendly with that can get me the things that I need? Knowing these things in advance, pre-planning, having some notes, having a contact, super important in moving forward. Bear with me. Personal care. This is an important one. You're not always going to be somewhere near a a Walgreens or CVS or a grocery store, or as I mentioned, a Harbor Freight. But personal care is important. For you to be at your best, you need the things that make you a better person. Maybe it's snacks. Maybe food's not going to be easy to get to. Maybe that's not part of the deal. Maybe getting food isn't easy. There's not, the McDonald's or a Subway or something right around the corner from where you're working. So throwing some things in your suitcase or in the box that you ship, having those things that you can just go grab when you need them are important. Medicine, dealing with pharmacies on the road. If there's something that you have to take and you forgot it, make sure that you have those kinds of things. Hard work can wreak havoc on the body. So Advil, Tylenol, whatever it is that helps you get through those aches and pains of the work when you're working hard, and doing those kinds of things are important to have as well. I travel with a pretty big backpack when I travel. It's not super convenient for walking through a city or, getting to a job site or worrying that, all of my stuff is in this bag. What happens if it disappears? So having something like a day pack, a smaller version of your backpack, something you can fit in your suitcase that you can put these things you need on the job site in, is super important as well. Also, making sure that it's not, world ending if it disappears. Have some backup stuff. Don't carry everything with you at all times. That kind of stuff. But it's things like stuff for bad weather, maybe a poncho, cold weather, warm weather. Do I need gloves? Do I have calloused leather-like hands, or do I actually need gloves so that things like ropes and cables and stuff don't tear through them as they get pulled? Maybe I'm a sweater. I don't need a sweater, but maybe I sweat a lot. So a towel, things like that, to make sure that, you feel your best throughout the day. You never know what the weather is going to be like. And a water bottle is always great. There's always water on site, but if you don't have a cup, sometimes that's the problem. Maybe they ran out of cups. Maybe they don't have any cups. Maybe they just expect everybody to have their own water bottle. So something of, making sure that you have those kinds of things. Glasses, prescription, reading as you get older, or sunglasses for that matter. Sometimes it's too bright outside. You're squinting. Maybe you can't see. Maybe you need to see hand gestures from front of house and you're on stage and you can't without your prescription glasses. Make sure you always have that stuff with you. I also suggest, a backup pair just in case. Let's say a light falls on your backpack that your glasses are in and they get crushed. Having a backup pair somewhere is always nice. Headphones, big and small. Maybe you need them, to be able to have a conversation with somebody over the phone because that's the way they like to converse. Maybe you're talking to somebody in front of house during setup and the radios aren't working for some reason, but yet you can make a phone call and you can keep your little headphones in while you're talking to them. Maybe you're on a bus with the rest of the crew. One of the guys is a snorer, or people like to stay up late and make noise. A nice, pair of noise canceling headphones, even on an airplane with a bunch of other people that you don't know. These are the kinds of things that can make your life easier. Maybe you're trying to relax a little bit on the job site and you're able to take a break. This will cut out the noise, the conversation, the constant back and forth from everybody while you're there. Extra chargers, phone chargers, those kinds of things. Maybe you left it in the hotel. Keep one in your backpack. You've got one with you. You could also be somebody's hero. Maybe their phone's not working. Maybe they need to charge something that they have in order to get, their job done or their life made easier. You can be their hero by having a charger. This also goes for those battery packs, the rechargeable kind that you can plug anything into. Having one of those is always nice because it can make things, better for everybody. You can loan it to somebody. Just make sure you get your stuff back. As I mentioned, warm wear, cold wear. You never know what the weather's going to be like. I was on a gig in LA. LA's LA. It's always warm. Never rains. It rained and it was cold. And luckily I had some stuff with me just in case. But you gotta make sure that you're prepared for those, especially out in the middle of nowhere, fields and festival venues and that kind of stuff. There's not always a Walmart or a Target near that you can go buy something out. And then travel essentials, things you need for the plane, stuff to kill time. Longest flight to date was 14 and a half hours. There's only so many movies you can watch on the headrest in front of you. So, have your music, have your headphones. I mean, headphones don't even last that long. So maybe a cabled pair, that kind of stuff to make you through it. Personal needs. This is more related to actually getting your job done. What happens if there's a gear change? You're supposed to have these lights. Now you have these lights. You're the programmer. Maybe a different console shows up that you've never used before, or broken console for that matter, and it's going to take 2 days for a new one to get to you. Be prepared to work at your highest level of efficiency. Regardless of any job that I've ever been on that required me to touch console, I've always had a widget DMX device in my bag. So if I have to pull out the control software that I'm most familiar with, I have that with me. I can pivot on a dime, get the job done. And also sometimes, I have all of my show files backed up. So if the rig looks somewhat like something I've used before, I just go grab that file. Because not a perfect show is way better than no show at the end of the day. So making sure, those things are covered. You've got things that you're comfortable with, that you don't have to stress out learning on the spot in order to get the job done. Do you need a network cable? Do you need a switch? Are you using that Ethernet technology in order to get the job done? Make sure that you have a backup, because you may not be able to get everything working, but you may be able to get some stuff working, or you may be able to tech things in advance just in smaller batches because you don't have specific devices with you. But make sure that you have a way to get your job done so you're not sitting there wasting time and other people's money. Getting on the internet is important as well, because there may be questions that you don't know the answers to, a manual that you don't have on site. You may have a networking issue that you're running into that you need some advice. You may need to email somebody. So having internet access, whether it's a hotspot or the ability to tether from your phone, which, the beauty is we all more or less have that nowadays, but making sure that you have those things is very important. Basic tools, as I mentioned earlier, anything TSA approved, that way it's with you. Figure out the minimum of what you need to get the job done. Not necessarily, wire cutters are wire cutters, but some other things that are smaller and TSA approvable will cut wires as well. Same thing with knives, screwdrivers, those kinds of things. If you can put it in the bag that you carry with you at all times, at least you've got that stuff covered. I mentioned earlier, computer, having that for show control purposes. Maybe you're doing a media server related job and you have to convert content. The Latvia comment I made earlier, I was sent over there because there were content issues. So I had to have a very powerful computer in order to get my job done. A standard little Chromebook wouldn't have done it at the time. So I needed to make sure I had something powerful enough that would help me get my job done and make sure that the show went on. If I'm sending gear, based on my job, if I'm repairing things, if I'm doing that kind of stuff, a table or a chair or something that, like one of those little fold out camper chairs, something that I can sit on. The beauty for a long time is I traveled with a road case that had not only parts in it, but the front of it would transform into a table. So I always had somewhere to work. I had to loan it to the console guy multiple times, the board up, because maybe they didn't send his table. And you become that guy that helped out, or that gal that helped out when that happens. The other thing that's also really key is knowing your limits. Yes, this is a picture of a toilet. It's a squatter in China at a company that I worked for. I learned about these before I went over, and I knew that my limit is that I wouldn't be able to pull this off. It goes beyond this, though. It goes to heights. Am I afraid of heights? It's good to know before you get stuck up in a catwalk. It's also, how flexible am I? Can I climb a ladder? Can I climb a rope ladder? Can I do those kinds of things? I'm very tall as well. So the middle photo, you notice how much room my backpack is taking up. That's a standard size backpack. I hung off that bed at my knees, so I slept diagonally by pushing them together. Different countries have different amenities. So you aren't always going to be comfortable, but make the best out of any opportunity. The other thing is size. I mean, the gear that you're working with needs to be taken into account when you're on things like lifts. For example, and we'll get to the photo later, I was doing a job for Shark Week for the Discovery Channel, and the only way that we could get the gear on top of the roof, which would allow us to project into the area we were projecting to, was via scissor lift. The product weighed more than the scissor lift itself could handle. So we had to disassemble it and send it up in pieces without a person, running it remotely from the ground in order to get it up there and then reassemble it once it was on the roof. Some of these products I'm not going to mention just because of safety issues and how long it's been and that kind of stuff, but it happens. But the key at the end of the day is you got to get the job done. People have paid good money, things have gotten done, but know your limits. If you feel unsafe, say something. If you feel super unsafe and they're still pushing, walk away from the gig. I mean, the key at the end of the day is taking care of yourself and making sure that you're safe. At the gig, find your contact. It's important. As soon as you get there, find your person. They're going to give you credentials. They're going to tell you where you need to go. They're going to tell you where your gear is. They're going to tell you where you can leave your stuff. You're always going to have stuff with you. They're going to tell you where you can leave it safely, securely. Maybe it's in front of a house, if there is one. Maybe there's a production office, any place like that. Find out from them. Find out where your gear is. The truck has been there more than likely before you, unless there has been a winter storm or a wreck or something of that sort. Find out where your stuff is. Go get your hands on it. Make sure that everything is showed up the second you get there. That way, if for some reason something didn't show up or was forgotten, that can be taken care of as quickly as possible. Listening is key when you're on a job site. Confirm your role. This goes for your contact. Make sure they know what you're doing, that you're there to do it. Let people know this is what I'm doing. When they ask you, when they see you, when you meet them, confirm your role. Keep your ears open. This goes a long way in listening to what's going on, but also from a safety standpoint. I had mentioned earlier headphones. You don't want to work on a job site with headphones and a music blaring the whole time you're doing your job. It limits you from being safe. And sometimes you can save yourself from getting injured just by hearing something before it happens. Things fall. People will yell at you, hey, heads up. So keep your ears open. Keep things safe. Take care of yourself. That also goes to pay attention. So maybe sometimes you can't hear what's going on. Maybe it's loud. Maybe somebody's cutting something or using an impact wrench or something of that sort. It's too loud. Keeping a visual alertness while you're there, whether it's a rock and roll show or whether it's a fixed install because maybe somebody's hanging drywall or putting in light fixtures. Just, pay attention to what you're doing. Questions are important. It's always better to be the person that asks too many questions than the person that doesn't ask enough. As you'll see, we've got a picture of the Houston Rockets locker room. The problem is there's a video system that was in place, and that video system showed the players themselves and their stats above their lockers. And the story was that the way that you were released from the team is you would come in from practice and your pitcher would no longer be on top of your locker. Well, for some reason, there was a system glitch that was happening. No one knew why. No one could figure out why it was happening. And the system would drop people's pitchers randomly. James Harden happened to be one of those people that it happened to, and he was extremely unhappy about it, and rightfully so. Luckily, I got to talk to him the day that I went in to detect this stuff, and what was happening was there was a magnetic locking system on the doors into the locker room that would cause the glitch because it was pushing an electronic, basically a power boost through the system that was causing a glitch in the video. And it was because the integrator that put it in used copper instead of fiber. And it was basically an antenna. And I just sat there and watched it. And as people would come in and out of the locker room, the system would act up. So I was asking, when is it happening? Does it happen when you guys are walking in the room? Does it happen while you guys are sitting in the room? Is anything weird going on? Is it when the lights are being turned off? Is it when somebody is using an electronic razor? Is it somebody using a blow dryer? All these questions you ask the questions. Helps come up with answers. Ignorance is a reason, not an excuse. This comes back to the questions. Ask questions. Telling somebody that you didn't know or you're unaware or those kinds of things really is a bad representation on yourself. So ask questions. Don't be afraid. It's key to knowing what's going on. Also asking for help. Can't do everything by yourself. You can do a lot by yourself, and sometimes things get done quicker, but when you need help, ask for it. If something's too heavy, this goes back to knowing your limits. You can't carry a 100-pound product by yourself. Ask for some help. If you need someone to hold the ladder for you because you feel unsure on it, ask for help. Remember to take care of yourself. Don't work way too hard. Just make sure that, you've got some help when you need it. This is an example of the Shark Week one earlier. This shows the video on the wall. One of the things, and you can kind of see it at the bottom, is there's some laser sharks in the pool. We were using a moving projector to do that. Again, we were on the roof of the cabanas, no access other than scissor lift from the street. So, know your limits, know your safety stuff, know how you need to get things places. This is an example of a show that I did years ago at Madison Square Garden. The video screen in the back of the stage, again, this is one of those planned for it kind of situations, was supposed to be 10 feet further up in the air than it actually is, but they sold out every single seat in the arena. So they had to drop it so that the people that were sitting behind the stage could see the show. The beauty of this show is that every time I went into Fry's Electronics for about 10 years, it was always playing on one of the big HD TVs right at the front of the store. So it was fun to get to see, that show that I helped get going, constantly being shown to people. We went back. I talked about the Latvia show earlier. They lost my luggage. Didn't have anything with me except my computer, which luckily was the only thing I needed. That top area, the slanted flat above the seats, that's actually where the performers were in that area. What you're looking at right now is one of the biggest rain bursts that they had. And that's a fire truck in the middle pumping water out from underneath the seating performer area because all the generators were down there and underwater. So no power, none of that kind of stuff. Luckily, the team there on hand had a plan in case it rained. They knew that this facility could flood. Why they put the generators down there, I do not know. But they did, and luckily later that night, the show was a success. That's about 10,000 people in that choir you're looking at right now. The video back on the backdrop is what I was working on with a couple other great people as well. But this is one of those things where things can go horribly wrong. It had an audience of about 100,000 people, and the performers were about 10,000. This was that LA project I was talking about earlier. I was there responsible for the video screens on the entrance of the red carpet. The biggest issue was on this job is that particular product that the video's on was not designed to get wet ever. It's an indoor product, but yet it was the right solution for this event. And we happened to get a forecast that it was going to rain. So tarps, plastic, all of that kind of stuff to try and cover things to make sure that everything went off without a hitch. And it did. It was a complete success, a great team, and one of the coolest events that I ever got to be a part of. This is the Smithsonian. I had a light that we were actually doing a demo inside the building earlier in that day, and people wanted to see it outside to know how bright it was. This was one of those learning experiences that I had that I've always kept at the front of my brain that when you're doing a lighting demo or presentation or show or anything of that sort in Washington, D.C., there's a good chance that a black van may show up. And this day it did. And 4 guys got out and told me that if I pointed it at the Capitol, there was a good chance the light would go out forcibly. I'll leave you to your imagination on how they would take the light out, but they were like, don't shoot it towards the Capitol. That would be bad for you. So we didn't, but it was fun getting to shoot it outside on this is the Native American Museum at the Smithsonian. Another learning and keeping your ears open and all of that kind of stuff was an opportunity I got working for the Circus. We did video mapping on the floor, and one of the issues that we ran into that was kind of uncontrollable was all of the video was coming out with a green hue. It was black rubber matting. It was grooved. And the reason why everything was green was because elephants go to the bathroom wherever they want to, and that stuff gets swept up and it leaves behind particles and dust and that kind of stuff. So it was actually elephant leftovers that was causing everything to turn green, because technically the mats were green. The other thing that I learned on this particular job was that you need to stay 30 feet away from the big cats, because that's how far they can shoot. So, lessons learned. A great experience, great group of people, a lot of fun. Yeah. And here's one that I had mentioned earlier, where it was a video. I was responsible for a media server. The tiles that you see, there's 10 of them. The job was sold by a huge name in the industry as these tiles being high definition. They were not. It was either this or flat panels. So going in, everybody's expectations was, high definition video, where in reality, if you wanted to create anything on them, you could create a letter or maybe Pac-Man. But that was about it. So the shift was to abstract, colorful content. Everybody was happy at the end of the day, and it didn't create the problems we all thought it might. Had the opportunity to light a band. If you've seen the Rocky movies, this band wrote a song about a tiger and that kind of stuff. I was there for the launch of a new lighting product. The company whose location it was at said that they had everything handled, everything set up, all of that kind of stuff. My lesson learned at this one was, when you don't have truss in front of the stage, there's no front lighting. So everything had to be rear lit or side lit. This is an example of what that looks like. And the frustrations I had that day with no front light was big, but we got through it. Everybody was happy. The party was a success. At the gig as well, hang out with people. People are going to invite you to hang out, have dinner with us, have drinks with us. We're going to go run around town because we've got a night off. Accept those. It's important to hang out with the people that you know, that you're working with. And in the process, you'll meet some new people. Some of those people will be the biggest names in the industry. It's important to get to know those people. You may not interact with them directly on the day-to-day, but there may be a dinner, there may be a hangout, there may be something of that sort. You're going to hear some stories and you'll learn from those as well. Don't be intimidated by the big names. Everyone started somewhere, and usually it's at the bottom. Even the people that I know that went to school for lighting and video and that kind of stuff still had to start at the bottom and work their way up. So don't be intimidated by those people. They know where you're coming from. They know where you're at right now. And, sitting there and hearing their stories will teach you a lot. You'll also make contacts that will stay with you forever. People that you will always know, be able to call, ask them things, bounce ideas off of them, have them step in to take care of things that'll help you out. And maybe it's not always, hey, I need this favor, I need that favor, but hey, I need your expertise. You're brilliant at what you do. I need you to give me some input. I need you to give people some input. Always be willing to help others out. Same goes back and forth. you're on a job site. I said earlier, ask for help when you need it. Help those when they ask you as well. Don't ever be too busy to help somebody out. Don't stop the show because of it. Your job has to be done right now. Do it, but let them know. But always be willing to help others out. People are also more willing to help you if you help them, and vice versa. So, keep up that relationship with people. Make sure that you're one of those people that they know will help out, because you become more valuable at that point. Every show you're at, every gig you're at, every meeting you're at, you're building your reputation, and make sure it's a solid one. It's very important. You don't come across as the jerk or the person that's not willing to help. That stuff gets around. People will talk about you. It may not be directly, they may not remember your name, but they'll say, hey, that kid that works for that company, or hey, that person that works for that company, or hey, that old angry dude that works for that company. Just make sure that, you're always focused on your reputation and, make a good one. Positivity is key. There will always be negativity. And rightfully so, because there's always going to be problems. Something's not going to go right. Something's not going to show up. Somebody's not going to do their job. Things will go wrong and it will affect people. But staying positive is important to moving forward and making sure that everything gets done. Doesn't mean smiling all the time. It doesn't mean, oh, happy me. It doesn't mean, dancing around and, a glowing beam of light, but it does mean that you will do everything you can do to get your job done. So keep it positive. Honestly, it helps everybody out, because complaining, whining, constantly talking about what's broken or what's not right or not fixed or any of those kinds of things distracts everybody. Distraction causes safety issues. Safety issues means that people might get hurt. It means that there's going to be a stop. It means you're going to be down a person. It means everybody's job is going to get harder. So stay positive, because everyone needs to stay focused. One other thing, you've pre-planned, you've talked to everybody, you've done the job has happened, you've met some people, the job is over. What do I do now? Do I just go on to the next job? One of the things that you always want to do is evaluate yourself and evaluate the gig. Here's a photo that happened overseas. I'm not going to say what country I was in when it happened, but if you'll notice, there's 2 cables attached to this particular plug. I still to this day don't know why that was the case, but it was. And I decided that I'd take a picture of it so I could share it with other people. But this is how all of the pictures I got were. I didn't understand why they were that way. I had to think about it. I had to fix the situation. It took time off of getting other things taken care of. But note these things down. What could go wrong? What might go wrong? How did I react to it? Those kinds of things. Be honest with yourself. Did I do anything wrong? Could I have done something better? Did I do my best? Did I make things look the best? Were there things that day that I couldn't handle or don't want to handle again or don't want to deal with again? These are things when you're making decisions and accepting jobs in the future that can be very important. How was the job that I did? Did I do a good job? Did I do a bad job? How did the whole project come out? This was a 2.5-story LED wall that took some work, but it was an amazing gig, an amazing project. Everybody was super happy. And, I was able to pat myself on the back at the end of the day and say, hey, we did a good job. Was I at my best? Did I eat too much? Did I not feel well? Did I drink too much? Did I come to work with a bad attitude? Did my bag get lost and I let it affect my attitude? Did I do a great job? Did I get along with people? Did I meet new people? Was I at my best? It's always worth evaluating yourself at the end of the day as far as how did I do on my particular job, because then it allows you to fix it moving forward. It allows you to do something different. Were there issues that I could have avoided? And how could I have avoided those issues? I did a demo in El Paso once for a company. American Airlines their employees were striking, so shipments weren't happening. I got to where I needed to go, but the gear didn't. And I decided to go to Mexico. It was literally a walk from my hotel. What I'd forgotten about is recently they had implemented the need for passports for every American citizen coming back to the United States. Took some work to get back in because I didn't have a passport with me. And I learned, hey, always have your passport with you if you're going to another country. So lesson learned. Follow up after the show's over, communicate with your contact. Thank them for the opportunity. They didn't have to pick you. They didn't have to pick the brand you're working for. They had a lot of choices out there. Make sure that they know that you're thankful for the opportunity to go out and learn and work and be a part of that team. If you want to work with them again, let them know it. Let them know that you had a good time. Let them know that you learned a lot. Let them know that things went smooth. All the positives. Even if something went wrong, let them know that you learned from it, just so that they know that you were paying attention and you're not going to do it again. Get those emails and phone numbers and that kind of stuff, Instagrams, Facebooks of the people that you worked with. You'll run into them again, I promise. You'll run into them at trade shows. You'll run into them on a job site. Maybe they'll pick your gear next time, and they hadn't in the past. So communicate with those people that you work with, because honestly, when someone asks them, hey, we need someone for this job, maybe you're that name that comes up. And then the key to all of it is never stop learning. B.B. King said once, the beautiful thing about learning is nobody can take it away from you. Your tools can disappear. You can lose your job. I mean, COVID has taken work from so many of us, but you still have your learning. And there's a lot of opportunities. And those of you that joined today, it just shows that, you're looking to continue to learn any of these Martin opportunities that they're giving for education online. It gives you a chance to keep learning. Even the best of us screw up. The name that you hear all the time, they have messed up. We've all messed up. Everybody's broken something they shouldn't have broken, or shorted something out they shouldn't have shorted out, or forgot to send something. But the key to every failure is making sure it never happens again. Again, learn from it. Never feel that you know everything. If you get to the point where you feel there's everything to know in this industry, my advice is take that mountain of money that you've saved and just retire. I don't think I'll ever know everything, because there's always some new product or some new discipline or some new anything, way that it's connected, it's controlled, any of that kind of stuff that's always coming out. I hope I never, ever, ever feel that way. The screw ups I can do without, but never stop learning. There's always something out there that you can learn that you don't already know, or a conversation that you can have with somebody that knows something that you don't. Also, what did I learn? You messed up, you broke something, you caused some problem. How can I learn from it and not ever do it again? How can I make the next job go smoother? How can I make myself an expert in what I do? So with that, I guess we'll open it up to questions.
Thanks, Scott. Wow, there's some great information there, guys. I couldn't think of, never expected there'd be so much to learn there. So thank you, Scott. All right. Yes, we are to the point where we open it up to questions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a few minutes of Q&A with Scott. Remember, if you would like to submit a question, you can do so at any time in the Q&A box right down there. And we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. All right, so first question we've got here is, what do you do if there's and Scott, if this has already been answered, maybe you could just reiterate it. What do you do if there's a change in requirements after reaching the performance place?
Well, I mean, I guess it comes down to what's the requirement. If it's a gear, like different gear was sent or any of that kind of stuff, honestly, you just got to roll with it. I wish you could say, well, I'm not doing my job because things have changed. But really, the reality is there's always going to be some sort of curveball thrown at you, whether something has changed, or you were supposed to stay in a suite and now you're at the Red Roof Inn, or you're in a tent out behind the stage. Just roll with it. I mean, people will respect that. They will, look at you differently. for just making it happen, because you're the savior at the end of the day. Just roll with it. That's my suggestion.
All right, next one we got is, how do you typically deal with personality conflicts? This can be extra difficult if the job is long or a touring gig.
That's part of life, is the reality. Is we all have differences. The last year's shown me a lot of that, good or bad. But it's just part of the way that things are. Sometimes you just have to avoid the person. If it really is something that's just turns you the wrong way, you've got your own jobs to do. Just focus on yours. As I mentioned, try and keep it positive. Sugar flies, that old quote, the sweeter you are, the nicer you are. You might see them turn when you've got a personality conflict like that.
All right, next one we got is, how do you best define and stick with your role when you are told to take one for the team and do something different?
I guess it kind of depends on what your role is. If it's something that makes you uncomfortable, or you feel unsafe, or there's an ethical issue with it, stand your ground. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that one, but I also feel that sometimes you do just have to take one for the team and make sure that you're helping. The key at the end of the day is the job, getting the job done, whether it's an install project, whether it's a repair project, whether it's a tour. The key is a successful project at the end of the day. If you want to be the one that's remembered as the person that kept that from happening, that's on you. But I suggest making sure that you're remembered as one of the people that helped make sure that the project got done.
This is an interesting one. When you're flying for the job, can you ask for business class because you're tall?
Well, at 6'6", no. And I've had my knees in my chin before on a 12-hour flight. The Latvia one that I commented on earlier, I was in between two people that were actually bigger than me on one of those 3-5-3 seating configurations. You just got to suck it up. And as I mentioned, take one for the team. You can try, but the difference in price nowadays as it was 15 years ago, it's a tough one. My suggestion is, as I mentioned in the very first part about logistics and stuff, see if you can't use your points. I mean, that's a good reason to save them up, is to use them on things like that, especially if it's a long flight. Make sure you're flying the same airlines if you have that ability. I'm always a believer in not sending everybody on the same airplane to get from job to job. Just God forbid something happen. So maybe you can fly the airline that you prefer, and maybe you can use an upgrade that you have or miles that you have in order to make your trip a little bit more comfortable.
All right, if you're asked to do a different job than originally planned, can you request more money?
It comes down to the job. I mean, if your complete role has changed, maybe so. There's a good chance you may be told no. But is more money for just, let me rephrase this. If the option is same money or no money because you're not going to do the job, which is more important to you? So, but I mean, you can always ask. The worst thing that anyone really is ever going to say is no.
Sure. When something does go wrong, how do you best look back to prevent that same problem in the future?
Just remember it. And I trust me, it's always going to be at the front of your mind, especially when you get back up on another job site doing the same thing. You're going to remember this. I remember the screw ups way more than I remember the successes. That's the unfortunate part, because I don't ever like to have a failed project. I have one failed project, which I'm not going to talk about ever, that I wasn't involved in the completion of it. It was a fixed install situation. There were way too many things out of my control, but I remember them all of the time when I have a new job coming up, that, hey, these are the things that I learned from this that I could have done to fix that from not being a success for me. Let's make sure that I don't do them this time too.
We've got one more. Have you ever had to cancel or quit a job due to a safety concern? And if so, how do you do that?
I have. Technically, I was going to, but as I guess the question a couple ago was, what happens when your job changes? I actually changed jobs with somebody, did their job, they did my job, and the safety concern was I was just too big at the time, like heavy wise, fat wise, to do the job safely. Like I couldn't wear a harness. The lift system that they had wouldn't handle my weight. So I literally couldn't get my job done. What I did is I got one of the littler guys on the job. My job was way harder once I changed. He got the easier job, and was happy to do it for me. So that's the easiest way to work around it. If not, again, you just got to keep yourself safe. If you're working for a company, make sure that they've got your back if you ever run into that kind of situation. That's an important thing to ask an employer is, if I get put on a job site, things aren't safe, what's your policy? How do you want me to handle it? Handle it the way they'd like for you to make sure that you get taken care of at the end of the day, because they'll have your back for sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Scott. That was our last question to come in, so perfect timing. Thank you again, Scott, for such an insightful webinar. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. I hope everybody enjoyed the time. Learned a little something.
So, yeah, I sure did. So again, as we mentioned in the beginning, we'll have this presentation out as a recording on our channels in just a few days if you'd like to go back and watch it again or share it with a colleague. We also have several upcoming sessions that you can, again, check out and register for on the Learning Sessions section of our website at pro.harman.com. Thanks again, everyone, for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.